So when I started college in 2010, I was spending a lot of time on Tumblr. I was 18 years old, I had just started college, and I was trying really hard to express myself without really knowing how. I reblogged an endless stream of images and quotes and florals and pastels, hoping that it would help me make sense of the big, unpredictable mess I felt like my life was becoming. I think a lot of people, probably some of you, can relate to that very specific moment in time, the early 2010s on Tumblr.com. A few years later, this image of a woman in baby doll dresses and pastel bows and her bleach blonde hair, dark roots showing, started to show up on my timeline alongside quotes about idle teens and female nihilism. It was a really specific aesthetic, but at the same time, it seemed as though everyone could relate to at least one aspect of it, and that caught my interest. If you haven't figured it out by now, I'm talking about Electra Heart, an album and a character portrayed by Marina Diamandis, or as she was known at the time, Marina and the Diamonds. We, the fans, were the diamonds, and Marina was the architect of this curated sensory experience of an album called Electra Heart. Electra Heart was a character Marina used at the time to channel the emotions she was feeling post-breakup, and what came with that was an album that, although it may be controversial with fans, is truly iconic. Electra Heart is, at its core, two main things. One, it's an exploration of the American dream through the lens of a Greek tragedy, and two, it's a deconstruction of femininity in pop culture. So let's talk about it. So when interviewed about this album, Marina has said that this album is about the American dream. She has also said it's not about the American dream, so you can take whatever conclusions you want to, but I personally take the conclusion that Electra Heart is absolutely about the American dream, but more so about a universal concept of spiraling and self-sabotage and losing control. It's also definitely about the corruption of societal ideals. So what is the American dream? It's actually a historic concept and something that has been written about with some specificity. As the governor of Virginia noted in 1774, the Americans, quote, "forever imagine the lands further off are still better than those upon which they are already settled." He added that, if they attained paradise, they would move on if they heard of a better place further west. So much of the American ideology is about never being satisfied. Marina has said that Electra stands for the corrupt side of the American ideology, the corruption of yourself. So Electra Heart will never be satisfied. She will always be looking for more. In an interview with the Washington Post about her previous album, which was called Family Jewels, Marina was asked about her references to American imagery and how it affects her music. She answered, "I think many people living outside of America felt its impact and influence growing up. MTV was the neon window into another life, another world, where everything seemed better. America is very much an illusionary country. I love Americans and dearly. They are some of the friendliest, most open, hopeful people I have ever met. Yet there are many contradictory parts to its culture and the messages it puts out. There is an unhealthy way in which people are valued. Who gives a shit about the old or the poor? You are more valued if you're youthful, beautiful, successful, etc. This is not normal in European countries, in my opinion. America puts such focus on being happy, yet people seem emptier than ever before. And as we all know, if you try and chase happiness, it rarely comes." As an American, I can't really comment on what European countries are like, but I can also say for sure, I do think that there is some hypocrisy to what the American dream suggests. Marina has also stated that Electra Heart has elements of Greek tragedy. Greek tragedy is a type of theater which includes deliberate stories with a clear underlying moral lesson at the end. The protagonist, or hero, in a Greek tragedy was expected to go through some kind of downfall, almost directly due to their own ego or arrogance sabotaging their own goals. Heroes in Greek tragedies could die at the end, but they could also be redeemed. If you know me at all, you know that I love a good concept album, but this album is not even a concept album, it's a concept era, and I say that because while there is an official track list, there's also a set of music videos that do not follow the same order. There are some bonus tracks which got music videos, so it's a very unconventional kind of era, and I definitely think that instead of talking about the track list like I normally do, the most effective way to analyze this era is to discuss the archetypes Marina has mentioned this album is sort of based around. Initially, I thought this album might be telling a cohesive story, but I don't think that's it. I think you can think of Electra Heart as a collection of short stories rather than a full novel. That said, there definitely is thematic consistency throughout as this character explores all these different archetypes at different points in her life. We have the housewife, the beauty queen, the homewrecker, and the idle teen. One of the most easily recognized archetypes in this album and outside of it is the teen idol, or IDLE as it's stylized here. This archetype represents the Tumblr famous girl Marina referenced when discussing the creation of Electra Heart. It's more of an idea of a famous girl, actually. When someone is so famous, they are reduced to public perception in many ways. The concept of Electra Heart as teen idol, or even as Prima Donna, makes me think of the Britney Spears song Lucky, where Britney sings, "She's so lucky, she's a star, but she cries in her lonely heart, thinking, if there's nothing missing in my life, then why do these tears come at night?" Teen idol is living in an American fairy tale, but feelings of loneliness are starting to creep in. She is also symbolic of a misspent but highly romanticized youth. We think how wonderful it must be to have all of these things, but is it really? What do you have left at the end of the day when you are living for other people? In Living Dead, Marina sings, "Only alive when I pretend that I have died." Teen idol only exists when the messy, real human parts of her are suppressed. In Bubblegum Bitch, teen idol loudly and proudly announces her persona to the world. She is unapologetic and she is fierce. She is who she is, and you're gonna love it. This song to me sounds like the fun defiance of youth. She sings, "I'll chew you up and spit you out, cause that's what young love is all about." In Radioactive, teen idol is in love. She's screaming, "I love you" at somebody who only casually says it back. Teen idol is finding that she may have all the things she thought she wanted, but is still lonely. One thing I think about Marina's lyrics, especially on this album, is that they are aggressively self-aware. Electra Heart knows who she is. She knows she's playing a character and she's gonna do it, because that's what it takes to get what you want. I think one of the standout tracks on not just the teen idol section of songs, but the album as a whole is Teen Idol. When I first heard it, it really stuck with me. From the haunting melody to the desperate and earnest lyrics, and especially her voice, so delicate on those higher notes and deep and velvety on the lower register, this track really stood out. In the chorus, she sings, "Feeling super, super, super," with a cadence of a cheerleader, immediately followed by the word suicidal. The juxtaposition of the cheering with a very real concept of depression and being suicidal is haunting. She's trying her best to hide her struggles with a smile and a wave. She also sings, "And the day has come where I have died, only to find I have come alive." Like in Living Dead, Teen Idol had to kill her past self to emerge. Teen idol grows up to be Prima Donna, who is an archetype that is desperate for fame and wealth. She sings "Anything for the crown" in her title track. She's very lonely and asking for adoration. She sings "Living life like I'm in a dream." We talk about how we all have parasocial relationships with celebrities and people online, but Prima Donna has a parasocial relationship with herself. She sings "Fill the void up with celluloid." These archetypes all have sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek lyrics, but about different things. Prima Donna is sarcastic about her relationship with herself and her role and her self-importance. She fully buys into her own hype, but she's self-aware about it at the same time. In Sex Yeah, she sings, "Question what the TV tells you, question what a pop star sells you." And "Been there, done there, got the t-shirt, sold my soul, and yeah, the truth hurts." It's such a callous and detached way to talk about what's happened to her, which is that she's been almost entirely commodified. I think the song with the lyrics that describe Prima Donna best is actually the song State of Dreaming. The song starts with a lyric, Millions of girls float on that one quote. Living your life by one quote is definitely a superficial way of understanding your own life, but Marina was actually talking about a specific quote and a person who said that quote when she wrote this lyric. She said she saw a tweet about how so many girls live by that one Marilyn Monroe quote. And the tweet Marina referenced talked about how Marilyn, in their words, died in an undignified way. This lyric in the song is definitely about public perception. Marina said, talking about Marilyn, she was a deeply troubled person, but that one image of her is strong enough to make people behave in a certain way and believe certain things. It's about the power of imagery. The third archetype is the homewrecker or the pinup. Marina referring to this archetype as a pinup makes me think about how much of this girl is defined by how she is viewed by others. She's commodified as well, and I think they all are in various ways. The fact that she's called a homewrecker is interesting to me too, because while I'm not saying she's an innocent victim in her own life, it makes me think about how women are often blamed for a man's wandering eye. She has a title track where she says, "You'll find me in the lonely hearts after I'm after a brand new start." She is constantly in and out of relationships and doesn't view it as her fault. She's a little bit detached from what's really happening. She's ready for a new start almost right away. This song has a sarcastic and cynical view of both women and men and the inevitability of relationships between the two. Because of her past, she has a hard time trusting that people are nice and just want to be her friend. She has a sarcastic view of what romantic heterosexual relationships are expected to be, because she thinks that there's no way to avoid a dynamic where at least one person is being used. And she acts the way she does because she'd rather be in on the joke than be a victim of it. I think this is also shown on How to Be a Heartbreaker. She's been hurt, so she's putting on this cold and calculating personality as a means of self-preservation. She's trying to tell us, you can't hurt me. I don't feel anything for you or for anyone. The lyric, "I love you, at least I think I do," is about removing yourself from the relationship emotionally. There's also 2 unreleased tracks that I think fit perfectly into this archetype, although I think that the lines between the archetypes are getting more and more blurred. The 4 archetypes are not as defined as they think they are. Evil, or E-V-O-L, love spelled backwards, depicts a cynical view of romance. It only takes 2 lonely people to fuck love up and make it evil. Homewrecker thinks heartbreak is inevitable, so why try? Why be vulnerable when you will only get hurt in the end? In Lonely Hearts Club, which is a great song, the ultimate message is, if I show vulnerability, will you change your mind? She's in such a volatile spot where she is scared to move because she doesn't want the illusion of whatever moment she's in to fade away. In Power and Control, she sings about relationship dynamics, and she tells this man, you may be good looking, but you're not a work of art. She's willing to admit that he's appealing to her, but she's not willing to be vulnerable. They say that you have to let people go, and if they're meant to be with you, they'll come back. Homewrecker doesn't think that's very fun. She only has time for her own games. Finally, we have Suburbia, or the housewife. She's a perfect 1950s housewife and mother in looks and in attitude. She represents the 1950s American dream of owning a home with a refrigerator and a white picket fence. She is perfect in every way and lives an idyllic life, but still finds that there's emptiness and loneliness around her. The music video for Suburbia is about the complete lie that is the American dream. Audio clips from advertisements are mixed with Marina singing, and in one audio clip you hear, "If you tell me you don't like this dress, I'm going to stick my head in the oven." It's from a 70s film called The Stepford Wives. It's a movie about the women of a community being replaced by robotic, perfect versions of themselves that are all actually identical to each other. The suburban American dream can't exist naturally. Housewife also has a song called Valley of the Dolls, a reference to the Jacqueline Susan book of the same name. It's about 3 women in New York City who are trying to make it in the entertainment industry and eventually succumb to darker things like pills, which they call dolls. When a small child is scared, they cling to their dolls for comfort. When Suburbia is scared, does she turn to her dolls? She sings, "Living with identities that do not belong to me." Sometimes I think Suburbia is a woman who has been the other 3 archetypes. She's been wild in her past and has finally settled down and grits her teeth and does what she can to pretend her past does not exist. This could also go the other way in that she's still a wild child but is pretending with everything she has that she's the perfect housewife. In songs like Starring Role and Lies, housewife sadness comes through. Her absolute loneliness is so evident. Loneliness is a constant theme throughout this album, regardless of which archetype you're talking about. But these archetypes are not fully fleshed out women with complex traits and histories and dreams. They are the idea of a woman and they belong to somebody else. In one track, which I'm not 100% sure how we're pronouncing, to be perfectly honest with you, Hypocrites, we have a good pun for the title. Hippocrates and hypocrites combined. So Hippocrates was an ancient Greek doctor who's known as the father of medicine. You might have heard of the Hippocratic Oath, which doctors take, which is an oath to do no harm. As a stark contrast to that, a hypocrite is somebody whose actions directly contradict what they say. Marina sings about a lesson that this man teaches her, putting her in the position of a student and him in the position of authority. Suburbia has a man who has saved her. Or has he? He's a hypocrite. Who is he to tell her who to be? She gets to decide that for herself. Another bonus track, By the Stars, is Housewife Reflecting. She sings, "All my life I've been so lonely, all in the name of being holy. And still you like to think you know me. You keep buying stars. You could buy up all the stars. It wouldn't change who you are. You're still living in the dark. That's just who you are." She accuses him, saying, "You only know how to own me." He doesn't know her. He doesn't love her because he doesn't know her. He's only collected her because that's all he can do. There are 2 songs that could be considered finales to Electra Heart, so we'll talk about the song Electra Heart first. Electra Heart is the final song in the series of music videos, and it didn't make it to the final cut of the album. The song is a grand finale, pulsing and loud. It's reflecting on the journey Electra Heart endured. She sings, "Lights, they blind me. The spotlight's too bright for her." As a very stark contrast, the final track of the album and the first track of the series of music videos is a song called Fear and Loathing. It's actually a really great finale song because it's Electra Heart looking back. She sings, "I see it for the first time. There is no crime in being kind. Not everyone is out to screw you over. Maybe, just maybe, they want to get to know you." Electra is learning that the false identities and archetypes she assumes to protect herself are not necessary to be a complete human. In the video, she's cutting her hair. She's shedding old skin and starting anew. Towards the end of the song, she sings, "And when the time comes along and the lights run out, I know a light will burn on when they blow me out." It's a song about legacy. It's a song about finding your place. Marina has said this song was instrumental in her learning to let go. She sings, "I've lived my life in bitterness." And it was a big step for her, she said, about learning to grow and learning to let go of fear and loathing and hatred within her own self, for herself and for other people. The song ends with a beautiful voice that Marina has shared belongs to her grandmother. Her grandmother is singing a Greek folk song, and I think that's so perfect. Electra Heart is dead, but Marina is stronger than ever. Electra Heart was a necessary vehicle for Marina to explore the concepts of being a woman in pop culture. I've heard it said that this album is a partially realized and somewhat dated piece, but that makes it a very raw time capsule. It's such a wildly specific moment in pop culture history and my own personal history. It's beautiful and it's tragic, and it's highly satirical and critical of the way we consume pop culture. Regardless of how we feel about this album looking back and how Marina herself feels, It's a very iconic album, and it meant a lot to a group of people. Electra Heart lived and died so we could learn a lesson about how to exist within ourselves. Personally, I have to say Electra Heart helped 20-year-old Sangeeta come to terms with herself. 2013 was such a pivotal year for me. I talk about how I feel like I peaked in 2013. I was doing very cool things. I had all this stuff going on. And Marina and Electra Heart really helped me learn about expressing myself. Before I go, I want to show you my version of Electra Heart, which is kind of a basic version. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I still kick myself for missing out on the pink vinyl. I saw it in her store and I was like, that'll be there later. It's not, and it's really expensive to buy secondhand. So if anyone hears about a good listing for that, let me know. I'm on the hunt for one. It's my new white whale. Live Through This used to be my white whale of an album, and now it's gonna be pink Electra Heart. It's just a standard record. It's black vinyl, that's it. And on the back, the track list. Alright guys, so that's it for my analysis and revisit of Electra Heart. This is the third in a video series that I'm trying to get going, where I make videos about albums that have been out for at least a year and have some kind of important impact on my own life personally. So we did Reputation, we did Honeymoon, of course this is Electra Heart, we have some more Taylor Swift going forward, maybe some Katy Perry, and some other albums. So we'll see how this goes. I'm enjoying it. I like being back on YouTube. One of the most interesting things about deep dives and analyses into these albums is that all of us probably have very different interpretations of things. So I'm not saying these things to be like, I'm right and you're wrong if you disagree. I'm saying that this is my interpretation, so please let me know what your different interpretation is. I would honestly love to know and discuss what you think the archetypes are representing. What songs do you think represent them? Because I think there's arguments for like every song representing every archetype. So I'll talk to you down in the comments. I legitimately really love to talk to you guys about what you think about the video. So tweet me, follow me on Instagram. All my links are below. And as a little side note, I actually live stream on most Fridays. I'm not doing July 3rd because I am busy, but the following Friday, which is the 10th of July, we are doing a live stream where we pick an album. It's like a book club, but with an album. So we're gonna be talking about Let Go by Avril Lavigne, which was such an iconic album to like little me. So if you wanna hang out, talk about that album and whatever else we wanna talk about, it doesn't only have to be about that. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so we can chat during my lives. And I will see you guys next time, bye.
I walked all night long in the dark just to be still.